The virus was designed to erase them. Crafted in the dark biolabs of the Solari Dominion, the Genesis strain was the pinnacle of engineered extinction. Targeted DNA disruption, adaptive neural rewiring, and trans-species jump protocols. It wasn't built to kill fast. It was built to unravel humanity from the inside out. The Solari didn't fear humans for their weapons. They feared their potential. Earth had grown too fast, colonized too far, innovated too well. So the Solari, old and decadent in their crystalline palaces, chose preemption. Strike before humanity could become a rival. The virus was released silently. No bombs, no invasion. Just a whisper in the atmosphere of Terra 4, a mining colony with 2 million souls. Within days, workers started reporting fatigue, hallucinations. Then the seizures began. DNA scans showed anomalies. Human genes were rewriting themselves, folding into chaos. Then the virus jumped. It reached Earth through a supply vessel, and it did what it was made to do. Hospitals filled, neural degeneration, muscle decay. Panic gripped the planet. Then the unexpected happened. Humans stopped dying. They changed. The Genesis strain didn't unravel the human genome. It stimulated it, forced it to adapt, accelerate, rewrote pathways of biology never before used. Some lost hair, others grew secondary organs. Brain scans lit up with patterns never recorded. And with the pain came something terrifying. Evolution. 3 weeks after the Genesis outbreak, the Earth was no longer recognizable. Skies turned violet as global temperature patterns shifted, influenced by biospheric microemissions from transformed humans. Entire ecosystems began to co-evolve. Forests grew at unnatural rates. Insects adapted to new electromagnetic frequencies. And in the center of it all, humans cocooned in transition. They called it the chrysalis effect. Scientists documented it in real time. On day 22, 17% of the population exhibited advanced photoreceptor development, retinas now sensitive to ultraviolet and near-infrared. On day 26, subcutaneous neural nodes formed, allowing limited bioelectrical interface with nearby machines. Human skin pulsed with faint light in some. In others, bone density tripled. But evolution came with cost. Some didn't survive the transformation. Others became too different, unable to communicate the way they once did. Cities were divided into zones, stable, transitioning, and beyond. The beyond zones became wild, semi-sentient biomes where language faded and instinct ruled. The world was splintering, but something held it together: hope. A small group of adapted individuals, dubbed the Vectors, retained their intelligence and developed new abilities. They began coordinating efforts to manage the chaos, stabilize communities, and investigate the deeper potential of the transformation. One of them, a former quantum biologist named Dr. Alira Grant, became the world's voice. "We are not dying," she said before a live global feed. "We are being reforged." Her speech sparked unity where there had only been fear. Meanwhile, in orbit, the Solari watched. Their generals argued the Genesis strain was not designed to evolve a species. This was failure on an existential level. A virus meant to extinguish had instead become a crucible. And now they faced a terrifying question. What happens when the prey surpasses the predator? By the 6th week, it was clear the transformation wasn't a phase. It was a redefinition of what it meant to be human. The Vectors expanded their operations, forming what came to be known as the Emergence Protocol, a global network of communication, education, and evolution. Old world technologies were modified to interface with the new human physiology. Data streams were decoded not by machines, but by minds capable of parsing quantum fluctuations in thought. Dr. Alira Grant, now the de facto coordinator of human adaptation, established the Nexus Core, a floating habitat over the Atlantic that pulsed with radiant energy, a hub for all surviving governments and adapting communities. Inside the Nexus, a council formed, not of politicians, but of thinkers, artists, scientists, and empaths. Their goal wasn't control, it was understanding. But not all welcomed the new order. Militant factions emerged. remnants of militaries and resistant populations, unaltered by the Genesis strain. They viewed the vectors as aberrations, a threat to human identity. The most vocal of these groups, the Pale Shield, launched targeted strikes against Nexus facilities. They feared not just extinction, but irrelevance. One such attack nearly crippled Nexus Core's fusion matrix. It would have succeeded had it not been for the intervention of a young vector named Ryan Velas, a former refugee whose mutation allowed him to anticipate kinetic movement before it happened. His bravery turned him into a symbol, not just of resistance, but of hope refined by pain. In orbit, the Zalari grew more restless. Reports showed Earth's atmosphere stabilizing under the new biofield layer created by human respiration. Data indicated ecosystem-wide efficiency increases of 300%. Earth wasn't dying. It was healing. Zalari overmined Kethvar called for a full military incursion, but the scientists warned, no one knew what the new humans were truly capable of. The Genesis strain had birthed more than mutations. It had awakened dormant potential. And as the emergence protocol expanded, so too did the range of human influence. Signals once too faint to register now broadcast effortlessly across light years. Time became less a constraint and more a suggestion. The first whispers of psionic synchronization appeared, shared thoughts across continents. Earth had become something new, and the galaxy had just become its audience. The Nexus Core's glow could be seen from space, an aurora of biolight and resonant harmonics pulsing like a heartbeat atop the Atlantic. To those aboard, it was more than a sanctuary. It was a forge. Deep within its central chamber, a convergence was occurring. The most evolved vectors, those whose minds were no longer bounded by time and matter, began to interact on levels previously unknown. Thought clusters merged, forming decision nodes. Not a hive mind, but something stranger, consensus born of resonance. And from this consensus emerged the catalysts. 5 individuals whose transformation had reached critical phase. Ryan Velas was among them, joined by Amina Hossein, who could alter molecular polarity at will. Thomas Reeve, whose spatial awareness extended into quantum fluctuations. Ji Hai Song, a synesthetic data empath. And Miraval, who could shape biofields into protective barriers. The catalysts weren't leaders by election. They were chosen by function. Their task, initiate the next phase of Earth's evolution. They began with the creation of harmonic wells, ground-based structures designed to stabilize regional mutations and guide ecosystems through adaptive symmetry. Forests grew sentient edge roots, oceans formed biomembranes, and deserts birthed crystalline structures that absorbed solar radiation and fed nearby settlements. Earth was no longer reacting to the Genesis strain. It was orchestrating it. King, the Pale Shield, fractured and desperate, attempted one last assault on a harmonic well in what used to be Arizona. They arrived with EMP cannons, crude biotech, and fury. They were met by silence. Then the ground shimmered. Miraval stepped forward, wrapped in a membrane of light that deflected their weapons before they fired. She didn't attack, she simply sang, a subharmonic tone that disassembled their aggression. The Pale Shield dropped their arms, not in surrender, in awe. Far beyond Earth, the Zalari command fleet prepared to breach soul space. They no longer saw Earth as a threat to be managed. They saw it as a singularity, a threat to the galactic balance. Overmind Kethvar issued the command, deploy the excision protocol, total sterilization. But as their ships entered the heliopause, they were met by something unexpected, a signal. Not in language, in emotion. It resonated through every Zalari ship, bypassing encryption, disabling weapon systems, collapsing neural overlays. It said only one thing. We are awake now, turn back. The signal that pierced the Zalari fleet was no accident. It was a construct, deliberate, multidimensional, encoded in frequencies Earth hadn't known how to use mere months ago. The evolved humans hadn't just changed biologically. They had changed cosmologically. Back on Earth, within the Nexus Core, the catalyst gathered in the harmonic atrium. 1,000 strands of light hovered in the air, each one representing a world connected now by humanity's evolved neural lattice. Ranvelas paced. The Zalari won't retreat, he said. Their pride is older than most stars. We don't need them to retreat, Jihai replied. We need them to see. The plan was radical. They would build a harmonic beacon, not just on Earth, but in orbit, formed from materials both biological and synthetic. It would act as a dimensional prism, projecting Earth's evolved resonance out across the galaxy. The message wouldn't be a threat. It would be an invitation. But such power would be noticed. As the structure began to form in low orbit, segments of the population opposed the move. Fearful of bringing more enemies, rogue vectors attempted to sabotage the project. The attack was intercepted, but the sabotage left one of the catalysts, Thomas Reeve, gravely injured. His spatial mapping ability had shielded the assembly from implosion, but his mind was fractured. A sacrifice. Not in vain. The beacon was completed. When it activated, the effects were immediate. Signals across the galaxy shifted subtly. Worlds aligned in orbit with greater harmony. Sleep cycles across colonies synced unknowingly. The distant minds of emergent species began to dream of Earth. But far more alarming, Zalari sleeper agents hidden in other empires began waking up and defecting. Back on the Zalari fleet, Admiral Sikron stared at the fading static in his display. Sir, said his comms officer, voice trembling, they didn't fight us, they changed us. Overmind Kethvar hissed in frustration. But deep inside, the truth was beginning to crack his crystalline resolve. They had unleashed the Genesis strain to destroy humanity. Instead, they had gifted them ascendancy. And now it was too late to contain them. Earth no longer rotated on the same terms. The harmonic beacon's activation had begun a cascade of unknown physics, a slow unraveling of dimensional constants near the planet. Light bent strangely. Gravity whispered secrets. Deep space sensors recorded a resonance pulse echoing from Earth like a star song older than time. Dr. Alira Grant stood atop the beacon's observation deck, watching the sky ripple. Behind her, Miraval and Jihai ran predictive models. We're not adapting anymore, Alira said softly. We're transcending. That truth brought awe and terror. Within the beyond zones, fully evolved humans, now termed post-vectors, ceased to use verbal communication entirely. They lived within harmony fields, interacting through emotion, light, and shared memory. Some phased through matter, others bent energy to will. But the phenomenon wasn't contained to Earth. Orbiting probes sent to relay the harmonic signal to human colonies began to report mirror effects. Mars, Titan, Europa, all began to evolve. Biostructures emerged. Colonists adapted faster than predicted. Evolution wasn't local, it was entangled. A new species was being born, not from one planet, but from one signal. The Zalari finally launched their incursion. 200 ships pierced the soul barrier, armed with null fields, biological dampeners, and quantum decelerators. They didn't announce themselves. They attacked. The first shots burned through old orbital defense stations. But Earth did not fire back. It responded. The beacon pulsed once, then again. A wave of energy rippled through space, not destructive, but transformative. Ships halted mid-flight. Crews screamed, not in pain, but in epiphany. Weapon systems melted into coral-like vines. Ship hulls crystallized into refractive shells. Zalari soldiers found their minds infiltrated not by code, but by memories, not theirs, of childhood, love, laughter. One ship captain, weeping, lowered his weapons and opened a channel. We were wrong. Not all Zalari accepted the change. A faction split, fleeing into the dark edge of the galaxy. But the rest, awed, broken, enlightened, surrendered. Not to force, to truth. Earth had not just survived the Genesis strain. It had become the catalyst of galactic evolution. The universe listened. From the ashes of attack and surrender, Earth transmitted its purest message yet, the unity pulse. It was not a weapon. It was a culmination, a deep harmonic wave echoing from the harmonic beacon, layered with thought, memory, empathy, and dream. Its resonance stretched faster than light, through subspace currents, into realms no signal had ever reached. Entire planets paused. Wars halted mid-battle. Across distant systems, minds awakened. Primitive species dreamed of fire and saw stars. Civilizations too arrogant to care about Earth now found themselves rewriting their histories. The pulse had no center, no language. It was feeling, ancient, raw, collective. On Earth, the catalysts hovered within the harmonic nexus. Their bodies no longer bound by singular form. They shimmered like memories given shape, minds fused in gentle alignment. "We've opened the veil," said Jihai, her voice a ripple of sensation. "Then what lies beyond it?" asked Mira. They received their answer in silence. In the far reaches of the galactic arm, something stirred. Not a species, a presence. Something that had long watched civilizations rise and fall. An intelligence so vast it had once thought humans irrelevant. Now it felt them, and it responded. A new wave struck Earth, not from space, but from within the very fabric of reality. Dimensional folds twisted, time skipped, post-vectors stabilized the environment, guiding the transformation. Cities restructured organically, mountains realigned along ley lines that had not existed a day before. Humanity was no longer adapting. It was ascending. But transcendence has a price. Elira Grant, whose mind had anchored the beacon for weeks, began to fade, her thoughts diffusing into the lattice. She smiled as her last words echoed across the network. "Carry it forward." Her consciousness joined the pulse, becoming part of the galactic song. Meanwhile, on a moon once colonized and forgotten, a child touched a shard of Earth's new resonance drifting through the void. His eyes lit with starlight, and around him the dust began to sing. The future had chosen its messengers. As the unity pulse echoed across the cosmos, ancient technologies, once inert, scattered relics of a long-dead civilization, flickered to life. On the edges of known space, in the Perseid expanse, a ring of impossible scale shimmered into visibility. A construct built before Earth had cooled, its purpose forgotten by time. It began to spin. On Earth, the catalyst felt a shift. Ryan Bayless fell into a trance-like state, his consciousness bridging realities. Mira and Jihai steadied him as his eyes flared with multidimensional light. "It's not just watching us," he whispered. "It's inviting us." The gate beyond thought wasn't a destination. It was a threshold, a key offered only to those who had passed the crucible of self. Preparations began. A delegation would journey through the gate, not to conquer or claim, but to learn, to listen, to be worthy of what lay beyond. Humanity constructed the Ether Ark, a vessel shaped not by hands, but by will. A living ship, fused with the pulse itself. It required no fuel. It dreamed forward. Aboard it were the catalysts, and one unexpected companion, the child from the forgotten moon. Now barely 10, he understood languages he had never heard, manipulated gravity without knowing the word for it. He was Earth's answer to the question no one had asked yet. The Ark approached the gate. As it neared, the space around it hummed with resonance. Patterns formed in the void, like song made visible. The catalysts joined hands, not from ritual, but instinct. Together they thought the final key. The gate opened. What lay beyond was not a place. It was awareness. A field of sentience spanning galaxies. An ancient collective consciousness once dormant, now stirred by humanity's harmonic emergence. It did not speak. It revealed glimpses of time before time, of minds that built stars, of compassion etched in quantum fire. And it asked one question: what will you become now that you are free? The catalysts did not answer with words. They simply stepped forward. The catalyst stepped forward, and the universe shifted. The gate did not lead to a realm of stars or matter. It led inward, into a lattice of minds and memories so vast they formed a living history of all who had ever reached awareness. The ether arc disassembled, not destroyed but welcomed, its essence absorbed into the great field of understanding. Ryan Vela saw himself as a child again, clutching a sibling's hand, fleeing the collapsing ruins of old London. He felt his past, present, and possible futures braid into clarity. Mira's grief for her mother transformed into a song that seeded stars. Jihad became light, flowing through the minds of 1,000 civilizations long gone. And the child, still unnamed, still new, walked untouched through this storm of memory. The field whispered, not to him, but from him. He was a node, a bridge, a beacon. Where others transcended, he rooted. He spoke not with voice, but with certainty. This is not the end of Earth, it is the beginning of something greater. Back in physical space, the gate pulsed once more. Across the galaxy, new harmonics emerged. Dormant species awoke, forgotten worlds blossomed. The signal that had reshaped Earth now spread with purpose. Not conquest, not dominance. Harmony. Some civilizations joined willingly. Others hesitated. A few resisted, fearing loss of identity. But the pulse did not consume. It amplified. Culture, language, belief, they fused with the network, becoming threads in a tapestry vast enough to hold every nuance. Even the Zalari, fractured by shame and awe, found themselves transformed. Not all, but many. Their crystalline biology evolved to resonate with pulse echoes. For the first time, they dreamed. The catalysts returned, not as leaders, but as guides. Earth was no longer a planet, but a source, a cradle of sentient synthesis. The world bloomed with light forms and aerial arcs. Oceans sang, skies shimmered with memory. Humanity had transcended the Genesis strain. Not in spite of it, because of it. They were no longer simply human. They were children of the pulse. It began with silence. The pulse, now woven into the fabric of reality, no longer needed to sing. It simply was. On every world touched by its frequency, change continued, not chaotically, but gracefully. The universe wasn't adapting to humans. It was evolving with them. Back on Earth, once a cradle, now a beacon, life thrived in symphonic motion. Cities of light drifted through the sky. Thought temples grew from crystalline vines. Oceans birthed sentient currents that whispered history in tides. Children were born already harmonized, already aware. The catalysts had dissolved into the field, their essence guiding without governing. Humanity had become a chorus, individual, free, yet unified. But the journey wasn't over. The gate remained open, pulsing softly. A beacon not just for those who had transformed, but for those yet to awaken. New missions formed, not of conquest but of communion. Vessels shaped by dream and will ventured through the stars. Earthlings, no longer just Terran by nature, but harmonic by design, offered peace, resonance, and insight to civilizations long hidden or newly risen. And the child who had once sparked with unnamed power? He now stood at the nexus of all journeys, no longer a child, but not quite a god. He sang the song of the becoming across galaxies, seeding stars with the memory of Earth's rise. His voice held no command, only invitation. Across the cosmos, wherever pain still lingered, the pulse followed. Wherever hope was buried, it bloomed. And in time, even the darkest corners of the void began to hum. The Genesis strain had been a weapon, but Earth turned it into a beginning. And the galaxy would never be the same. End of story.